Thanks, Jen. Switching gears a little bit here, we're going to give you an update on the facility assessments ongoing in OPQ from respect to the GDF 3 updates, as well as our efforts on inspections and alternative tools. So when we conduct a facility risk assessment, we're looking at high-level areas, within the application. So we're looking at the product attributes, how the product's being manufactured, is there data at scale, or is there extensive scale-up that's being proposed? We're looking at the manufacturing complexity of the unit operations, how the applicant has provided data to demonstrate that they understand the state of control. And we're looking also in terms of cross-contaminations. The extractables, leachables was a good kind of connection to this talk. The extractables, leachables, possibly from the process, as Chris talked about. Reported deviations, so we're looking back at those facilities. What's going on with the facility? Are there reported deviations? Are they related to the product that's being manufactured? And also any issues that were encountered during the development of the product. And one of the key things that we're also looking at is the quality surveillance information, so bringing in other information, other sources from the Office of Quality Surveillance and OPQ. So how do we make that risk-based decision? So we're first looking at that prior inspection history. So we're looking whether it's a new facility, a new building in a facility that we have history with, or a new manufacturing line within a building. We're looking at prior experience with that similar manufacturing process. So does the company have experience with aseptic manufacturing? Does the company have experience with modified release dosage forms, things like that? And then we're also looking at what information we have from other regulatory agencies. So especially from our partners in EMA and MHRA under the mutual recognition agreement, we're looking at that information to see what can be leveraged and what we know about the site from that to then make a determination on how we'll evaluate the facility. We'll look at CGMP issues relevant to the application product. So obviously if the site makes sterile and non-sterile drugs and the site's having issue manufacturing non-sterile drugs, but not sterile or vice versa, we'll factor that into the assessment. Specific product and process risks, so OPQ conducts a risk-based assessment with the drug product disciplines, the drug substance disciplines, and the manufacturing assessors, and the team will come together and understand the product and process risks and see if we should cover those on an inspection or through a different evaluation. And then obviously when we look at supplements, we're looking at are there significant process changes either at a facility or for the product itself. So how do we make this assessment? So we look at all the risk factors I just talked. Step is to then say, well, okay, maybe we want to do an inspection, but are there other factors that we can consider to then, rather than do an inspection on site, request records from the facility and then evaluate the facility through an alternative tool. And so essentially, click too many times. So essentially what we wind up doing is we go through this process. Do we need to do an inspection? Do we have other information that can mitigate the need for that inspection? And that can either occur through a records request, through a voluntary remote interactive evaluation, or obviously an inspection. And then once we use that alternative tool, we'll then assess whether the information that's provided back mitigates the risk that we identified. If those do not identify the risks, we can either proceed to an on-site inspection, or we may proceed, if deficiencies are identified, to take a complete response action based on an alternative evaluation of the facility. So as we're doing this, whether it's an inspection or an alternative evaluation, we're looking at the evaluation in the context of the compliance program 7346-832 for pre-approval inspections. So we're evaluating the facility in the context of objective 1, are they ready for commercial manufacturing? Objective 2, are the operations at the facility consistent with what's in the application in terms of the manufacturing process, the formulation, the control strategy. We're then also looking for data integrity, right? So the application, one of the foundations of our review is that we're trusting what you're giving us in the application while we're conducting the review. And so on inspection, we're then validating through the inspection, the laboratory controls, or possibly through remote regulatory assessments, whether there is concerns about the integrity of the data that we're looking at to then inform our review. And then the fourth objective that was added in the most recent update of the compliance program is the commitment to quality and pharmaceutical development. So that's very similar to what you've seen in the surveillance program and the quality maturity indicators. And so we're looking really from a pre-approval perspective, what's the culture at the facility in developing and supporting product development for new products as they bring on new products. They kind of identify the risks associated as facilities continue to build their product portfolio. So when we do inspections, just some quick tips. Make sure that you and your partners, because I know a lot of folks are also working with CMOs. Make sure your facilities and your contract manufacturers are continuing to operate with a state of control, following the regulations and policies outlined, in 211s and the guidances and the inspection guidances. Really stay up to date on what's going on in the facility. Are there trends? Are there issues that are going to flag to the FDA during an inspection that we'll then want to dig further into to see if you're following up and investigating, right? It's not just finding the failure and fixing the failure. It's then also preventing that next failure. And so always document, right? Just because you did something and you tell me you did it, you're gonna have to prove it to me while I'm on the site. And then and sort of in line with that corrective action, the trend, really, monitoring the product life cycle and looking what's going on. From don't kind of avoid or kind of disavow a quality defect report from a consumer complaint or something like that. Really dig in and see if those complaints that you're getting are potentially a signal that needs that something's going on with the process that needs to be updated. Very similar to that, the point on Objective 4 in the pre-approval program, that robust pharmaceutical quality system that's very mature and that's staying in front of issues rather than reacting to issues. So the other aspect of our facility assessment is the alternative tools, right? So the main one that folks probably are familiar with from the pandemic are the remote regulatory assessments. And so what you found during the pandemic, we have now implemented as a part of our routine assessment process. So starting in October of last year, we in OPQ are actually now leading the 70484s for pre-approval inspections. So during the pandemic, most often the Office of Regulatory Affairs was issuing the records request, and we were collaborating with them on the assessment of the facility for the applications. Now we are now leading those, so tying directly to the application review. So we feel that's going to bring in a nice strong synergy between the application review and the facility evaluation. To date, we've initiated over 20 RRAs, and so most have so far led to approval recommendations. So we're really hoping that as a part of this, we are mitigating the need to do on-site inspections where feasible, where there is lower risk, and really conserving the agency's resources from an inspection standpoint, and really targeting the higher risk facilities. And so one of the things that we haven't done too much in great volume is the remote interactive evaluation. So we're continuing to look for opportunities to explore that voluntary remote interactive evaluation experience, leveraging what we're learning from various ongoing initiatives. So some tips for the remote regulatory assessments. Treat the records request like you're responding to requests during inspections, right? I mean, this is basically our way of inspecting the facility, but not doing an inspection. Provide clear, accurate records and explain the context of the information provided. It's really critical that we may ask a question. If you're unsure of the interpretation, really make sure that you're being clear. I'm giving to you this in response to this, and here's why I'm giving it to you, and here's what it means, so that it kind of prevents the back and forth or doesn't open up questions during the assessment that might lead to concerns from the agency related to what we're seeing. And make sure that your CMOs are prepared for application-specific requests, right? One of the things that we sometimes see, even on pre-approval inspections, is we'll show up and the company will say, "I didn't know I was named in the application." So we haven't necessarily seen that on the remote regulatory assessment side, but just make sure that they're prepared and they understand that the request is in support of the application and how critical that is, especially the goal dates. They may not know the goal dates, things like that. And so some of the resources, just a flag that have been issued recently. So we've issued the alternative tools guidance in September 2023. The remote interactive evaluations guidance was updated in October 2023. That was the guidance that you guys are probably familiar with during the pandemic. And then we've also issued the conducting remote regulatory assessments, questions and answers draft guidance in January 2024. So there's a lot of resources out there, and that's why I'm not going into too much detail. Because these are great guidances to sort of what to expect as we proceed to these remote regulatory assessments.